You can almost feel it. El Nino is making contact, and the North Pacific is starting to wake up. I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, October 8th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and like and subscribe. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. All you have to do is click the little Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And if you'd like to contribute, you may. Hit the heart with the $ in the middle, the special thanks button, and you can make a small contribution to the cause. And I'd like to take a moment to thank the folks that donated last week. Tim Caston, Jason Odom, you guys are right on it almost every week. Anthony Aiden, Elliot Harris, another continuous contributor. Randolph, thanks so much. Generous contribution. Michael Miner, Mark Wadia, and Victor Mackay. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And now to get to the title of the video. It seems pretty self-evident, but we've been following El Nino now for months and months and months. There's been ups and downs, there's been stalls, but finally it looks like the El Nino signal is not just this theoretical thing in the tropics, but it's actually starting to make changes in the atmosphere over the North Pacific, and lo and behold, we might actually get some surf from it. It's about time. So let's dive right in. We'll start by looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean. We see a small gale, nothing too particularly impressive, but 20-foot seas off of British Columbia, Washington. We also see something trying to develop in the West Pacific. You also see some sort of a tropical system down here, but we're really kind of going to ignore that because nothing's forecast from that. But then we see another tropical system off the Philippines, and we are going to spend some special attention on that. And you just get the general sense that there is a pattern focused on about 42 north, traversing the North Pacific. That is the signal that I was talking about earlier. But before I dive into the deep end of the pool, let's start with the basics first. What's the surf doing? What's the ocean doing right now? We're going to check buoys up and down the coast. We're going to start at Buoy 029, Point Reyes Buoy, good representation for what's happening in Northern California. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting that buoy, and we're mapping that energy into the height of the swell in various period bands, all the way up from 33-second periods, which would be super long period energy, which there is, and then down to 5-second period wave energy, which is like pure, pretty much unrideable chop. And this is the energy in feet in across the entire spectrum. See a little bump here at 14 seconds, 1.2 feet, but really, if that's a swell, it really is comprised of energy over this whole area under the curve in this region. Then we see some wind swell here in about the 9-second period range. Put all that together. Primary swell, 1.8 feet at 14.2 seconds from 179 degrees, so southern hemi swell. And that roughly equates to waves in the 2.5 foot range, waist high, maybe something like that. And then we have that secondary swell, 1.9 seconds at 10.1 seconds from 252 degrees. It's probably more like 270. And that's surf height of about 2 feet, and that's probably being a little bit generous. Then we play the same game down in Southern California. We're using Buoy 191, the Point Loma South buoy. It's probably the most exposed of all the Southern California buoys. And looking at the energy there, we see, yes, that same sort of pattern, something in the 14-second range, but really the Channel Islands blocking out all the wind swell. Put it together, primary swell, 1.9 feet at 13.6 seconds from 193 degrees. That's, again, 2.5 foot surf, thigh high, maybe approaching waist high. And then some secondary background energy, probably not even real, 0.8 feet at 17 seconds from 173 degrees. That'd be 1.3 foot surf and, knee high or something like that. Then we go to the north shore of Oahu, Waimea Bay Buoy number 106, examining the energy there. Very, very minimal, not a whole lot going on. Primary swell 1.7 feet at 8.6 seconds from 342 degrees. That's knee-high surf and really not particularly rideable. So we're going to take a little bit of a look back in time. We're not going very far. We're going to Friday, the 6th of October, just sort of looking at what's going on. There's that tropical system here that developed off of Mexico, not doing a whole lot. We're kind of interested, not super interested, but this area of low pressure here off Japan only generated 18-foot seas and the beginnings of a tropical system down here off the Philippines trying to get some traction. You can see as we get into Saturday, yeah, maybe 18-foot seas off Japan. The tropical system not doing a whole lot there. The tropical system there not doing a whole lot. Then we move into Sunday and you get the sense of seas, not big, but what is that? The blues 8 to 10 foot and that's maybe 18 feet and that's, you know, 12 or 14 feet here off the U.S. West Coast. But you get the sense that something's trying to stir the North Pacific, and not just up along the coast, but over a broader area. And then we'll just click to right where we are today. So that's where we are. And now we're going to start looking into what's coming in the future. So we're going to start looking at jetstream level winds. These winds are about 30,000 feet to help support the formation of gales. When those gales form, they help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a push in the jet to the south. Well, I see one there. I see one starting to get going there. What that helps do, and this one's a good representation here, creates a counterclockwise flow like an eddy aloft down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And low pressure down at the ocean surface generates winds. Winds then get traction on the ocean surface. They generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, get groomed out, eventually turn into swell. That is, the shorter period elements of the raw wind swell fade out, longer period elements emerge, and they travel unimpeded over the open ocean, eventually hitting your coast, and when they do, that turns into surf. All right, so of note, this is an older model. NOAA has been having extreme problems with their data feed that we're using. I've talked to them. Unfortunately, they have responded. They're working on it. They're aware of the situation. They thought they had it fixed on Friday, but no, they didn't. And so they'll be back at it again on Monday. So we're suffering through this for a couple more days, but I think we're going to get there pretty soon. All right, so as of, let's get to Bing. There we are. 18C Sunday. Trough in the Gulf of Alaska being fed by 1, 2, 3, almost 4. That's 170 knot winds. Notice the jet is completely consolidated the whole way across the Pacific. Well, it sort of splits right off California, but for all practical purposes, consolidated, energetic, holding together, looking solid. Maybe not doing super lot right yet, but it looks solid. This is exactly what you want to see for this time of year. As we get into Monday, that first trough starts pushing into the U.S. West Coast, but winds hold. The trough over the date line continues. As we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, pretty much the same pattern. Another trough digging off the U.S. West Coast, another trough digging over the northern Gulf of Alaska, another trough as we get into Wednesday, the 11th of October, setting up off Kamchatka, being fed by 190, 200, almost 210 knot winds. The stronger the winds in a trough is always a very good thing if you want a storm, and we're starved for storms, so we'll take it. And then as we get into Thursday and Friday, another trough theoretically sets up in the Gulf of Alaska, remnants of the trough that was over the date line. And here we are a week out. Things still looking very good. We will take it. Hooray. So then we go down at the surface. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. We see the effects of that jet stream down where it really matters. Wind blowing on the ocean surface. Sunday morning, we got a little bit of a, I'll call it, well, it's not even a gale. Doesn't even, oh yeah, there is maybe 2 pixels of 35 knot winds buried under there. But it's just getting going in the Gulf of Alaska. Another gale here, not even a gale, low pressure with 30 knot winds off Japan, and the main tropical system down here off the Philippines. As we get into Sunday night, notice 45 knot winds aimed at the U.S. West Coast. That is good. Another little gale building behind that with 30 knot winds. A secondary fetch off here with 30 knot winds. Now this one probably isn't going to do anything. This one might have some hope, and our tropical systems continue. So we get into Monday. First tropical system out of the way. Second one building with 40-knot winds aimed at the U.S. West Coast, and not, like just tweaked up here against the Pacific Northwest, but out somewhere where it really matters. The magic line is about 45 north. If you can get fetch south of there, then we're really in business. That even opens up the corridor some, or at least a lot more for Southern California. So gale there, something trying to get going. Our tropical system, we'll sort of review that a little bit more in a minute. Tuesday, the system starts moving inland. Another system starts building off Japan. As we get into Wednesday, things are looking very interesting. Low pressure hanging over just off the U.S. West Coast. Secondary low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, and a full-on storm with 50-knot winds, maybe even a pixel of 55-knot winds, pushing off the Kuril Islands, bound for the dateline, and our tropical system looking fairly good. As we get into Thursday, we have 45+ knot winds on the northern dateline. Another low here. You get the idea. We'll just put this into motion. By Friday, things sort of settle down up north. Not completely. The tropical system, though, pushing off to the north, looking good. Will it recurve? And notice continued lingering fetch, theoretically, from the Gulf, or from the gale that was over the north dateline. This is looking like fall. So what are the effect of those winds on the ocean surface? Well, right now, 18Z Sunday, I'm just going to push it to, there we go, this would be 5 o'clock. Seas at 20 feet off of the Pacific Northwest. That's a good thing. 18-foot seas off of Japan, our tropical system building. As we get into Monday, the first low pressure system already fading out. Another one building behind it with 20-foot seas. We go into Monday night, 22-foot seas in the Gulf of Alaska, and you can sort of see this for yourself. Continued fetch as we get into Tuesday, and rebuilding with 20, 22, 24, 25-foot seas. Now this is pretty much maybe too north for anything but Cape Mendocino northward. New system building off Japan, tropical system in developing quickly. By Wednesday we have, there we go. What is that? Now the 48-foot seas here. This is the highest seas over the whole domain, but notice the position. That's from the tropical system, and even that's probably not believable. But just eyeballing this, that is about 46-foot seas over the north dateline. Let's see if we can get a little more. Now it looks like that's about where we're going to hold into Wednesday night, into Thursday. And actually, this model run is looking better than what we had this morning, so that's a good thing. Continuing even into Friday with 30-foot seas in the far extreme northwestern Gulf aimed at the U.S. West Coast. Tropical system, we watch this, look at this, it's starting to recurve. We've talked about this in the past. When El Nino is building in the ocean's atmosphere, or over the North Pacific, it feeds the jet stream. The jet stream sinks further south. It starts getting consolidated and stronger, which is exactly what it's doing. It can then take these tropical systems, recurve them off to the northeast. The 97 El Nino started with a swell hitting Northern California. I think it was the 28th of September at something like 8 feet at 25 seconds. It was one of these tropical systems that went up, got recurved, hit the jet stream, got all sorts of energy injected into it. It went extra tropical, made 50-foot seas in middle of September, late September, bound for the U.S. West Coast. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen this time, but we watch for that sort of thing. You can literally see the seas from the north dateline swell, so you get into Saturday approaching the U.S. West Coast and Hawaii, and by Sunday, they're right off the coast. Multiple smaller low-pressure systems building, the tropical system doing the reef curve dance very nicely. Now, what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't believe a model a week out, especially I don't believe the GFS model when it comes to, tropical systems, but the pattern looks favorable. And then not to be left out of the picture, believe it or not, as we get into Monday, a little gale starts building south of New Zealand, And with 26-foot seas aimed to the northeast as we get into Monday night. Yeah, 26.6-foot seas right there. Now, that's nothing huge, nothing great. There's an island out here sort of blocking some of it. But it's entirely possible that the south shore of Oahu could get some swell. I don't know that Northern California or Southern California will see much from this, but you never know. There's going to be a lot of interference from northern swell, it seems. But then, as we get into Tuesday night and Wednesday, another gale develops in the exact same location with it says 30 feet. We're going to say 29-foot seas right here. Again, there we go. 30-foot seas Wednesday midday, holding into Wednesday night, into almost 32-foot, 33-foot seas into Thursday. So another swell producer that certainly Southern California could get a piece of the energy, and maybe even protected breaks in Northern California could also see some energy. When things turn on, they turn on. And it appears that someone has opened the spigot. We'll take it. It has been, I was thinking about this today, it has been really a year. The last decent swell I really saw was somewhere in July or August of last year. And since then, yeah, there's been waves, there's been stuff here and there, but nothing that kind of really gets your attention. We've just been in maintenance mode for a year. It just feels like maybe we're going to move into something a little bit stronger in the coming weeks. Local winds or wind swell forecast, California here, Hawaii here. There's our low pressure developing off the coast. Again, the date is a little bit old, but get the idea. Northwest winds along the coast, but a front pushing down to Cape Mendocino on Monday morning. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. As we get into Tuesday, another low pressure system, a relatively light wind pattern with some south winds for Cape Mendocino, and then trades for the Hawaiian Islands. As we get into Wednesday, though, things get not particularly great. High pressure starts building, setting up this pressure gradient along the coast. 20-knot north winds just pretty much wiping out all of central and North California. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. As we get into Wednesday night, I don't think this low really exists. This was, again, from the older run of the model, but the local wind projection is still the same. Thursday, pretty much a blowout. North winds, 20-25 knots off the coast. Then fading as we get into Friday, California, nice light winds for Hawaii. We get into Saturday, same sort of deal, light winds for the Hawaiian Islands. So we got to suffer through like Wednesday and Thursday, and then at least in California, then we're okay. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. It's been a long time since the trades have lightened up. We'll take it. A rough idea of precip for California. Rain for Monday in Northern California, making it down to the San Francisco Bay Area Monday, late afternoon into Monday night. And then maybe another little pulse of precipitation down to Point Arena, something like that on Tuesday night. And then that's pretty much it. Things dry up and no other rain of any significance forecast. Surf spot forecast. We'll do Ocean Beach for Northern California. You can see some building swell as we get into Tuesday. That's from the first of two local gales. There is supposed to be more swell on Wednesday, but there's also strong north winds. That just makes a bunch of wind swell, and so the model just sort of craps out. Then after that, it's fading wind swell. Things settle down. We know there is something more coming, though. You can see swell sizes here. 4 feet on Tuesday, maybe 5 feet at 11 seconds. Maybe 12 or 13 seconds, hard to say. Then you got this, there's ground swell, but there's a whole bunch of wind swell all mixed in. Things just sort of mess up. And continuation of wind swell into next weekend. Let's go take a look down south. We go down to San Diego. Whatever north swell there is, it's going to be really steep angle. It's going to be north even for Northern California, like, 317 degrees, so even San Francisco is going to be a tough time getting a lot of it, and much of the swell. And then there's the whole wind thing going on too, and you can see the wind swell theoretically working its way in, and then things fading out from there. Swell height, 4 feet at 8 seconds, and then little bits of swell somewhere on late Tuesday, 1.5 feet at 12 seconds, something like that. So really not a whole lot surf yet but the fundamentals are looking to be in place. Then we go to Oahu. Mainly, these systems are way far east of the Oahu swell window, maybe a little bit of energy pushing north of the, racing north of the islands to generate a little bit of something. 4-foot surf. Let's see if we got that right. Yeah, there you go. 3 feet at 13 seconds, and this sort of continuous background energy just because of the North Pacific being stirred up 2.5 to 3 feet at 10 to 11 seconds. A little bit of energy, and then you see theoretically the first signs of that big dateline storm, if it forms, with swell heights of 4 to almost 5 feet at 15, 16 seconds, something like that. Most of the energy from that thing is supposed to be aimed more at the U.S. West Coast, though. But still, surf is surf. You take it where you can get it. All right, let's go take a look at long-term. What's going on with the Madden-Julian Oscillation, the MJO, and ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. These two weather oscillations, the MJO running about 6 weeks in one phase or another, and then the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which turns on and pretty much goes from like La Nina for 5 years and then turns into El Nino for a year or two. These are the major influences of our weather and potential for generating surf, discounting, of course, the seasons. We're going to start by looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. It's this periodic weather oscillation that rotates around the planet from west to east on the equator. The active phase of the MJO on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other. They rotate opposite each other around the planet. The active phase is like a low pressure system, the inactive phase like a high pressure system. Our friend is the active phase of the MJO. And when the active phase of the MJO moves into the West Pacific, and note, it takes between 4 and 6 weeks for it to make its way across the Pacific. But when it starts moving into the West Pacific, it can dampen trade winds in the West Pacific. Okay? It's a low pressure system. It also takes warm, moist air down on the equator, on the ocean there, starts lifting it up into the atmosphere. That energy gets fed into the jet stream. It amplifies the jet stream, and a stronger jet stream then makes stronger troughs, it consolidates the jet stream, and it builds stronger troughs, which too create low pressure, which create winds, which create surf, etc., etc. So the active phase is our friend. 1, because it helps to feed the jet stream and generate swell, but 2, because what it also does is because it dampens trade winds over the West Pacific, that allows warm water that's normally all piled up there because of incessant trade winds blowing from east to west across the equator, allows that warm water over there to start slipping to the east, not on the equator, but it falls under the equator, and it's like a subterranean ball of warm water that eventually it takes 3 months, maybe 4 months to make its way across the Pacific. That ball of warm water will eventually hit the Galapagos and Ecuador, erupt to the surface, and create a warm water slick on the surface of the ocean. Now, if you get successive active phases of the MJO, they create successive Kelvin waves. That ball of warm water is called a Kelvin wave. And if you get successive Kelvin waves, they start steadily and continuously warming the East Pacific, changing the balance of water temperature in the Pacific. Normally, the East Pacific is cold because there's trades, that's offshore winds, creates massive upwelling, lots of deep cold water from down in the ocean gets drawn up to the surface. But when El Nino happens and you have multiple active phases of the MJO, playing one right after the other, it starts warming up the water temperatures over in the East Pacific off of Ecuador. Then that warm water starts evaporating up into the atmosphere. It starts changing the weather pattern above the ocean. And that's when we say El Nino is getting coupled with the ocean. That is, the ocean is the first start of the signal. And then the atmosphere eventually gets affected by the continuous warm waters in the East Pacific. That changes the circulation, specifically a thing known as the Walker circulation over the Pacific. And then that's when all the goodness and fun starts happening, because it gets amplified. It starts amplifying the jet stream, the storm track, and then it's just continuous storm after storm after storm if you have a sufficiently strong El Nino. But it all starts with the MJO and active phases of the MJO. So, just a little bit of a note. We have had 6 active MJOs so far this year that have created 6 Kelvin waves that are all piling warm water up off South America, hence the El Nino hype. And we now have a 7th Kelvin wave in flight, created from the active phase of the MJO, the most recent one that happened in July, August. So, but we're looking even further ahead than that. We're looking for yet another active phase of the MJO, seeing if it's happening, and seeing if maybe we can get yet another Kelvin wave out of this warm water transport machine that's been going on all year. All right, so we have a series of buoys, the TAA buoy ray, strung across the equator from east to west. This is the equator here. This is the date line here. We're looking at the arrows. There's wind sensors on those buoys. Those buoys transmit the data up to a central processing facility, and then they use a model to sort of fill in the gaps. But you just look at the arrows. The length of the arrows, the directions they're blowing tells you this is strong east winds over the East Pacific, moderate to strong east winds over the Central Pacific. But look at this, right about, somewhere about 173 east. You have east winds, and you have full-on reversal of trade winds, not anomalies, full-on westerly winds here. Very interesting. We've been talking about the Walker circulation, and the center of where the Walker circulation is, that is the upward draft of competing air masses. Normally it sits over the maritime continent, and you have downward falling air over Ecuador and South America. But this suggests, if what we've been watching is really happening, that there might be an updraft starting to form here just a little bit west of the date line. Now, we look at anomalies. That's the thing that really matters, because it's kind of rare actually to get full-on westerly winds. You normally just get a slackening in the trades, and relative to how things normally are, it smells like westerly anomalies. But now let's go over to the East Pacific and see what we're doing. Looking at the arrows, pretty much neutral. There's this one arrow here out of the west, but it's been there for days and days and days, and the thought is it's probably just more like a stuck sensor on the buoys that are stuck right here. So I'm not buying that at all, but I'll say a neutral pattern here, pretty much neutral over the Central Pacific, but full-on westerly anomalies raging almost to the date line in the West Pacific. This normally I'd say is the active phase of the MJO, but it could also be when El Nino gets in place and this Walker circulation thing gets going that we were talking about. You just have this perpetual, it's like a continuous active phase of the MJO. And what it is, it's the Walker circulation building over the dateline region. And eventually, theoretically, it's supposed to move off to the east. But you get a perpetual westerly wind anomaly machine, and every drop of warm water that's left in the West Pacific and over in the maritime continent gets transported to the east in the form of multiple Kelvin waves. We think that is happening now. Hooray! Quickly looking, 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. So South America, Central America, New Guinea there, the equator right there, the date line right there. You probably can't see the arrows on YouTube, but the orange anomalies are westerly anomalies. We see them scattered pretty much the whole way across the Pacific as of October 2nd. Same thing on the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. This looks great. I'll take it. The forecast for the next 2 weeks. Well, we can also see the Hindcast too. So reds and oranges are westerly anomalies, blues, purples, easterly anomalies. This is the whole planet though. Dateline runs right up the middle. So the Pacific starts about 125 east, so right here. And what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. The area where if there's westerly anomalies right on the equator, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, they can create a Kelvin wave. That goes from about 125 east to about 170 west. If you have westerly anomalies beyond there, you're probably not going to get a Kelvin wave. You will not get upwelling. It dampens upwelling, but it won't create a quote-unquote Kelvin wave. All right, so, and looking back in time, we see September 23rd, actually even in the middle of September, westerly anomalies gently started building. Pretty solid today. Now, not over a huge area, but a solid small pulse of westerly anomalies. Forecast to go for about another 2 or 3 days. Some sort of easterly anomaly event after that, and then westerly anomalies return. GFS model has been very flaky. It's like, I'm having a hard time even believing things a week out on this model, so I'm not too worried about this easterly wind thing just yet. Let's dig a little deeper. All right, so the westerly anomaly pattern, is that really associated with the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, or is something else going on? Well, we're looking here at outgoing long-wave radiation. Okay, this is cloud cover, right? The MJO, Madden-Julian Oscillation, if it's a low-pressure system, it typically generates clouds with it. The inactive phase of the MJO typically is high pressure. It generates no clouds. So this is just a measure of cloudiness. The oranges and reds, lack of clouds. The blues, cloudy pattern. So according to this is a statistic model. Oh, and let's get oriented here. Equator right there, date line right there, Kelvin wave generation area right here, cloud-free skies. This suggests inactive phase today over the Kelvin wave generation. Same thing 5 days from now, 10 days from now, 15 days from now. Now wait, I have west anomalies, but I don't have clouds? That's kind of strange. I go look at the GEFS model. It says the same thing, but then it says basically neutral after that. During El Nino, typically what happens is the MJO all but disappears and the El Nino base state takes over. Okay? This model, the statistic model, having a bit of a tough time. The GEFS doing better, but both of them are saying no real signs of either active or inactive phase, kind of a neutral pattern. That sort of smells like a building El Nino base state. Let's dig deeper. Phase diagrams, okay? These are drill downs of where the active phase of the MJO. How do you read this thing? Kind of weird, isn't it? Okay. Well, the MJO, let's just take it. The MJO starts like over Africa, the far west Pacific, and it moves west to east over the Indian Ocean to the maritime continent. That's like Bali in that area. To the west Pacific, to the east Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, back over Africa. The heavy dot is where the active phase is right now. So if the active phase is basically over Africa, then somewhere here in the far east maritime continent is probably the inactive phase. Hence that, the cloud-free sky thing over the maritime continent. But the active phase is exceedingly weak, and maybe the statistic model here says moving to the Indian Ocean. The dynamic model says it's not even going to do that, just noodling around at extremely weak status somewhere over Africa. So no real strong active phase suggested per these models. The upper level model, which shows areas favorable for precipitation. Now, this is a statistic model, but let's get oriented here. South America, Central America, New Guinea, the equator right there, date line right there. 8 panels, 5 days a panel going out 40 days. Greens, areas favorable for precipitation. So that would sort of suggest, well, the active phase or something that smells like it in there, holding over the West Pacific into about the 23rd of October. Then dry air starts moving in. The yellows is dry air, but a very weak dry air pattern. Then a weaker wet air pattern as we get into the beginning of November. But what this really is showing is no strong MJO signal at all. Yeah, there's weak dry and wet air, but a distinct lack of MJO. That smells like an El Nino pattern. So then we go look at the CFS model. It goes out a little further and it tells us some other things. This chart overlays, so the solid black contour here, like there, MJO, active phase of the MJO. So remember I said there was an active phase of the MJO in July that created westerly anomalies. So the reds are the westerly anomalies. There's the active phase. Pretty weak, and get oriented here. The date line running right up the middle. Far west Pacific here at 125 east. Okay, Kelvin wave generation area ending at 170 west. So there is an active phase of the MJO here, created westerly anomalies. Okay, and then again, as we got into September, you see the building westerly anomaly pattern. Strong westerly anomalies for the past week or so. This red thing here, the equatorial Rossby wave. And notice the inactive phase of an equatorial Rossby wave interfering, theoretically creating some easterly anomalies. Same thing the GFS model was hinting at when we looked at that. And then after that, like all of about a week from now, strong westerly anomalies start building, and they just take over, and then here you go. Here comes another active phase of the MJO. Now, what I didn't talk about, and I should probably go back to the other chart, but we'll just do it here. Easterly anomalies, massive, strong easterly anomalies in, where is that? 90 east. That's over the maritime continent. That's almost in the Indian Ocean. That's like the eastern Indian Ocean. We talked about this Walker circulation thing, this updraft where you have falling air on, well, maybe I can get this in here. Falling air on two sides, they converge on the equator, and then they lift up, okay? Well, if you have westerly anomalies here and easterly anomalies here, that would suggest that there's like downward falling air hitting the ocean surface and splitting, creating the westerly anomalies over the Pacific and easterly anomalies over the Indian Ocean maritime continent. So there's a thing called the Indian Ocean dipole. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but that's sort of like another way of describing the Walker circulation. It clearly looks like there's downward falling air over the maritime continent. What we want to see is upward sucking air, and this sort of hints at it, but we want to see it. You'd see it in the form of cloud cover somewhere here near the dateline. We'll get into that in just a second. In fact, here is the outgoing long wave radiation. That's how you can sort of tell where you have downward and upward falling air, okay? Downward falling air has come from high up in the atmosphere, no moisture up there, very cold, falls south, no cloud cover. Browns are cloud-free skies. Greens are wet air, moist air getting sucked up into the atmosphere, hits cold air aloft, creates clouds, cloudiness, and you get this, what they call negative outgoing OLR. That's the greens. It's basically just cloud cover. Looking at this actual data, you see a steadily building cloud cover pattern here on the dateline, and the forecast is for it to build. So we think the center of the Walker circulation, if I was just eyeballing this, I'd say it's at about 174 east, something like that. And that's exactly what you want to see in a building El Nino. It means El Nino, not only do we have the water signal, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but also it's starting to finally get coupled with the atmosphere. And based on looking at the jet streams charts and the storms and all that, yes, seasonally you would expect some of that stuff to start happening. But the seasons coupled with a building El Nino builds momentum for El Nino, and that's what we desperately need. We were kind of wringing our hands, freaking out back in July because the momentum and the coupling with the atmosphere wasn't happening. Now, it looks like it is happening. A little bit late, but it's getting started, we think, and we're going to look for just a little bit more evidence of that right now. Here's more, not modeled, but actual hard, I think it's even satellite-based, outgoing long-wave radiation data. Okay, dateline runs right up the middle. So Kelvin wave generation starts here about 125 east, the far west Pacific. You can see, now this goes back a year. Last year, the oranges and reds, cloud-free skies over the dateline, and all the cloudiness was over the maritime continent. Australia was getting lots of rain then. We were dry as a bone in the Pacific. Our jet stream was miserable. Our winter surf pattern was just non-existent, and there was no energy to support storm development. We continued the whole way through the summer. Now notice the dry air blockade broke up in May. Multiple Kelvin waves in flight, but not anything really magnificent starting. Then as we got into July, you start seeing little pockets of wet air building on the dateline, but not enough to, you got to get some momentum going. And this is just the first little bits of what was all the moisture or the uprising air over the maritime continent slowly migrating over the dateline. And now here we are. We have a broad-based pattern filling almost the entire Pacific as of right now. California is there. This is down on the equator. The far west Pacific is here. This is looking not better. Now, not as strong as that. That was a 3-year mature La Nina. But clearly, not only do we have the building cloud pattern over the dateline, but we have a very clearly developing dry pattern setting up over Australia. This is exactly what we'd expect to see in a legitimate building El Nino pattern. So we'll play the same game yet one more time. The CFS model going out 3 months. I'm not going to belabor the point too much. Dateline, this is outgoing long wave radiation. They call it ULRF, but it's still the same thing. This is the dateline right here. Kelvin wave generation area starts 120 east. This is past performance here. This is the forecast. This is pretty much the same thing we've been seeing for like forever. Slowly building blues, that's cloudy skies, building more just recently. The model makes it look like it's just a wall of death getting ready to set up over the dateline. Probably not that, but you can also clearly see the building dry air pattern over the maritime continent. That's supposed to build, peak out somewhere in November. Classic Indian Ocean dipole positive pattern, but typically that also is good for the Pacific. All right, so now let's overlay 850 millibar zonal winds. Westerly anomalies, all right, past performance here. You see the yellows and oranges, westerly wind pattern building over the dateline. Here's where we are today. Little pockets, there's our little block of dead air for about a week, and then after that, theoretically, off to the races. Now, this is idealized and probably way overstated, but still, you get the sense. You also can clearly see the easterly anomaly pattern here building over the maritime continent, getting much stronger into late in November. The split between the two of them, where the downward falling air is, somewhere would be right around there. What's that? We would call that, about 125 east or something. So the downward branch there, the upward branch based on, let's do this again. The upward branch based on the outgoing long wave radiation, somewhere right around here, right around the dateline, maybe 175 east. And slowly moving as we get into January, forecast to be, I'll put it right there. What's that roughly? We'll say, no, it's not that. I'll just say about 150 west, somewhere south of Hawaii. That would be the most intense focus of the storm center of El Nino, is somewhere north of the Hawaiian Islands. Now, will that bring precipitation into California? Typically, you want this to move the whole way to 120 west, which would be underneath California. We don't see it there, but we'll see. We'll just have to play this by ear. Now, let's keep digging here. All right, MJO. Let's overlay the MJO. All right, now, again, this was supposed to be last week we had a pretty solid MJO. I think I was saying even by this week we should be off to the races, and then all of a sudden things have backed off a little bit again. So now we'll give it another week, and then we have westerly anomalies building strong over the Kelvin wave generation area. We think that's going to happen. That will probably result in yet another Kelvin wave, probably be Kelvin wave number 8. Okay, after that, inactive phase, but westerly anomalies continue the whole way into January. Easterly anomalies strong over the maritime continent. And finally, the low-pass filter, the high-pressure, low-pressure bias. The low-pressure bias, this solid contour here, this center, the El Nino signal. The center of it, according to this, is at 175 east. Keep that in mind. I think I've said that because the models are telling me to say it 4 or 5 times already. We're going to get into that a little bit more. But we have 3 contours, a 4th building. This has been on the charts for a long time now. At November 5th, a 5th one building as we get into about the middle of December, deep into El Nino territory. Also notice the high pressure bias, as one would expect during a significant El Nino, developing over the maritime or the Indian Ocean with 2 contours as we get into January. Notice here, this is the La Nina signal, the dry signal. It was also here over the Pacific the whole way through till September. And then all of a sudden, the trade wind machine kind of faded along the California coast, and things started looking better, and now it's all but gone. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of significant northwest wind events. Some of that just because it's the season, but I think the El Nino signal is building. And according to this, pretty strong, and the model's been unchanged for months and months and months now. Let's keep going. And one last thing about the MJO, we're just going to stick a fork in this. This is the strength of the MJO. No matter where it just shows you the strength of the MJO. This is January 2023. We had all our massive Kelvin waves driven by the active phase of the MJO over the Pacific. You can see it 2 standard deviations above normal. This one was 4, a host of others. Then July, the MJO machine just went to sleep. Now, we are getting active MJO-like symptoms, but we think they are not so much driven by the MJO anymore, but more driven by the El Nino base state, the center of the Walker circulation, that downward falling air creating west anomalies in the West Pacific, the upward sucking air, the uptake vent of the Walker circulation setting up over the dateline, and that will drive the westerly anomalies. Still produces Kelvin waves. The MJO kickstarts it, the Walker circulation then puts it into overdrive. So what's going on in the ocean? All right, we've talked about the MJO and sort of the dynamics in the West Pacific and this sort of this atmospheric thing, but it's not really so much driving the Pacific that then affects the ocean. So this is data from the TAO buoy array, those series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. Notice dead spots here and lots of, these X's are the sensors on the TAO buoy array, on the buoys. These anchor lines hold the buoys in place. Sensors are on the anchor lines. They collect subsurface temperature data. Notice the big gaps here. The models fill in the gaps, and you get a profile of what's going on with sea surface temperatures. So that we've all been sort of griping about, well, why is this sector of the buoy array down? And, why aren't they not doing any maintenance on the buoys? And what it turns out, in fact, one of our viewers sent me a link, and it appears that there actually is a significant upgrade program in place to replace and update a lot of the buoys with newer technology, newer sensors, all that sort of stuff. Now, it's not going to be finished. I forget. I think it was 2024, maybe even in 25 when it gets finished. But the project is not being abandoned. It is in an upgrade state, and that is good news. Unfortunately, it's not going to help us for this year, but I think we've got enough clues, enough tools, enough understanding that we can infer what's going on by picking through, that's what we're doing here, picking through a lot of different clues and then trying to build a cohesive, comprehensive picture of what's going on based on the clues and hopefully using some sound and reasonable judgment. All right, so warm water. 30-degree isotherm. This is 30 degrees centigrade in the West Pacific. It's actually backtracked some. I think it was in the 160, 170 range a couple weeks ago. It's backtracked some. Not a good thing. If we are looking for building Kelvin waves, you'd expect warm water to be pushing off to the east. 29-degree isotherm. 160, I think it was about 158 last week. 28-degree isotherm, it was like 143. It's backtracked a little bit. But the 24-degree isotherm has actually gotten a hair bit deeper. It's down at, well, that's, what's that? 25 meters, 50 meters. At one point it was down to 60, but we're down at about 37, 38 meters, something like that. So pretty much the way it's been. But it's not the actual water temperatures. It's the anomalies, difference from normal for this time of year. And we have a reasonably beautiful picture to show here if you know what you're looking at. So again, West Pacific here, East Pacific here. We have 2 degrees above normal temperatures right here. Well, what's that mean? That is the beginning of a Kelvin wave. Kelvin wave number 7, from the active phase of the MJO that's set up in July. It could push some warm water, not super strong, but a ball of warm water right there. Am I right? July. Yes, there's so many of these. I'm not having, actually, no, I'm sorry. That is from west anomalies that are happening right now. There is this Kelvin wave. This is Kelvin wave number 7 here, I think. And I'm getting them all confused, but okay. This is 2, 3, 4, 5 degree anomalies. I think this is Kelvin wave number 6 here. From the active phase of the MJO in the July timeframe, it is starting to impact the coast now. We've been waiting for warm anomalies to appear at the surface. We think that is imminent now as this starts to erupt. So Kelvin wave number 6, Kelvin wave number 7 here, forming from the westerly anomalies that have happened here in September. And we know we have a theoretical another burst of west anomalies coming, which will create, we think, Kelvin wave number 8. Another version of that picture showing pretty much the same thing. Kelvin wave 6, building, getting ready to erupt off of Ecuador. Not huge, but let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5-degree anomalies. And that gets even warmer as it gurgles up to the surface. So month and a half of warm water there, but what's this? All this more warm water building back here. Kelvin wave number 7 developing here. And look at this, a whole flood, not a flood, but a steady stream of warm water pushing off the maritime continent, falling into the Pacific Ocean, date lines right here, getting ready to create or at least backfill in. I mean, this is just there's 4 months of warm water right here without counting whatever might be coming 4 months from now. So that's October, November, December, and January. So we have warm water the whole way through pretty much middle to end of January, and we think there's more coming. This is a very good situation to be in. Sea level anomalies. This is just the you can use the buoys to figure out what's going on down on the ocean surface or under the ocean surface, subsurface, or you can use satellite data. This is Jason 3 satellite, and probably a couple others. These polar orbiting satellites of the Earth's here, rotates around it, the Earth rotates under it, and over about a week you get complete coverage of all the ocean surface. You take out the waves, the wind waves, the tides, and you see whether the height of the ocean is higher than lower than normal. Well, there's Ecuador. Let's see, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, equator there, dateline there, New Guinea there. Positive anomalies, 0 to 5 centimeters to 10 centimeters. What this means, if you have warm water at depth, it expands, creates a bump on the ocean surface. This suggests there's piles of warm water to the dateline, whole way even west of the dateline. In fact, falling off the maritime continent along New Guinea, and then building here and continuing. Months of warm water, just basically confirming what we saw in the previous images. And then finally, my favorite image, subsurface or upper ocean heat anomalies. This really gives you the overview. It goes back a year, West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Year ago, La Nina, cold water off of Ecuador and Peru. This is 5 degrees north and south of the equator, and I think it goes down about 300 meters, okay? Driven by unusually strong trade winds, all warm water sequestered in the West Pacific. Then around November, December, active phase of the MJO created westerly anomalies, a little weak Kelvin wave. Kelvin wave number 1 made it across the Pacific, just barely. January, stronger active phase of the MJO. See the curve here with warm water pushing west, Kelvin wave number 2. March, another active phase, Kelvin wave number 3. Number 4 in April. Number 5 in May. The active phase in the July timeframe creating number 6, which is the one that's building off the, off of Ecuador and Peru as we speak today. And then you can see this here. You see that curve right there. And you see this circle starting to close in. The beginnings of Kelvin wave number, let's see, did I get that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 7, building. And we think there's another one even behind that. This is all very good news. Now, all that is great, but at the end of the day, if you don't have warm water building on the equator, on the ocean surface, you're not going to modify the atmosphere above it. The ground truth is you got to have warm water because warm water creates evaporation. Evaporation does things like actually breaks down high pressure and breaks down the trades and allows warm, moist air to move up into the atmosphere, and that then starts the global atmospheric, or at least the Pacific Basin atmosphere circulation pattern change. I am happy to report today that we actually have some building pockets of warm water here. Not anything huge, but we have a clear El Nino base state here with warm. These are sea surface temperature anomalies, differences from normal. So all the oranges are much warmer temperatures compared to normal. We see that happening. It's been sort of this spotty orange thing, but now we have some deep red starting to show up. We think this is Kelvin wave number, is it 6? Yeah, number 6 starting to erupt, and that's a good thing. Eventually that'll get caught by the trades. We still have trade winds, they're just weaker than normal, and it'll start backfilling in here. Now, at one point we had these sort of oranges out to 150, even 155 west. They've sort of backed off the past month, I'd say, but now we have some hope that they're going to build. Sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days. It's just on the equator we're interested in, right there. That's nothing huge, but I mean, temperatures are already pretty warm down here, but this shows a building warm signal. We had a cooling signal for about past 3 weeks or more, something like that. Easterly anomalies buffeting this area. That's no longer the case. We think westerly anomalies building over this whole region. We saw that on some of the charts before. And Kelvin waves starting to erupt. So this is beginning of a better pattern for the East Pacific Ocean. And then the backed off view basically showing the same thing. The last little, I call it the remnants of La Nina here, this sort of easterly pattern setting up here, or it's been here forever, but it's slowly filling in with warmer water. Trades dampening. Trades a pretty light forecast to Hawaii. At some point, I expect this to disappear. Of note, I just noticed this. Notice the easterly anomalies here starting at about 110 east. That downward falling air splitting, westerly anomalies going this way, easterly anomalies going this way. Think this is perhaps evidence of this Indian Ocean dipole pattern that we've been talking about, and we think that also is contributing or a side symptom of developing El Nino. Sea surface temperature trend in the Pacific. The Nino 1.2 region, that's the far east Pacific, right off of Ecuador. Temperatures have been falling. Remember, I'd said for about 3 weeks we've had this like easterly pattern and temperatures cooling. And you could see that going from like 3.1 degrees down to, well, we were down at I'll give that about 1.65 a couple of days ago. Now we're starting to come up again. Remember, we saw the warming temperatures in the previous couple of charts. Today's value, 1.839 degrees above normal, almost 2 degrees above normal. So we're moving back into the right regime. But it is the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. Okay, value today, 1.162 degrees above normal. You go, 1 degree above normal. What? That's nothing, right? That's like, and now this is centigrade also. But consider this. In the official El Nino monitor region, this is 5 degrees north and south of the equator from a point south of California out to almost the dateline. El Nino starts at half a degree above normal. So that would be, the beginning of a weak El Nino. Moderate El Nino starts at 1 degree, okay? Strong El Nino starts at 1.5 degrees. But also note that this data here is about 0.2 of a degree below what the official record suggests. So at one point, this whole stretch in here, we were at minimum strong El Nino status. We've fallen off a little bit. The models suggested that, but they also suggest that we're going to supposed to come raging back pretty strong here in the next couple of months. I don't know if you can see this here. This is the official OISST 2, I think, or OISST 2 sea surface temperature anomaly weekly data. Okay, this is the official area. So August 23, we're at 1.5. That's the beginning of strong El Nino. We went up to 1.6 for 3 weeks, up to 1.7, and then we fell again down to 1.5. Still minimal strong El Nino status. And the new data comes in probably in a day or two, and my guess is it's going to fall to like 1.3 or something like that. So, but this is part of the El Nino roller coaster soap opera we've been on. But the point being, we're still in much better place than we were a month ago, 2 months ago, or certainly a year ago. Here's another chart. Sea surface temperature anomalies from Ecuador the whole way out to, this is the whole way across the Pacific from 5 north to 5 south. So Nino 1, Nino 2, Nino 3, Nino 4, and Nino infinity. You could see the building warm signal, and especially it was, mid-June here out to about the beginning of September. And then notice the deepest of oranges backed off, and then temperatures, I wouldn't say they dropped some, but also notice the expanse of them increased. And now here you even see here and here a little bit of a backtracking in the extent of the coverage. Again, we think this is short-lived, especially with I think this was one attributable to that stall that happened back in the June, July, early July timeframe where just like nothing was going on. Then we got another Kelvin wave, or westerly anomaly wind event in July that created another Kelvin wave that's starting to erupt, number 6 now. And we expect that probably this level of orangeness will start rebuilding back in over here in, it's going to take a couple of weeks, and that'll start filtering its way over here. The Nino 3.4 region goes from 170 to 120, so this area here, you can see it's a mix of, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, we can't even see it. Here we go. Yes. 1, 2, 3. So this is 1 to 1.5 degrees and then building the whole way here. It's an average of the temperatures over this whole area. So you really need warm water. Not so much here in Nino 1 to 2. You really need it out here. But it will get there eventually, and especially with more Kelvin waves in flight. So just to put things in perspective, here is our current situation. Warm water. Nino 3.4 starts right here, 120 west out to 170 west. This is the official El Nino monitoring region. October 7th, you see our picture. Now let's see if we can pull up what is happening in some other years. So we'll go to 2015. Well, 2015, honestly, and it was eventually evolved into a super El Nino, doesn't look any better. Well, it's warmer out here. This is this year. Here is 2015. Warmer out here than where we are today, but still we're kind of in the ball game. Let's see if we can pull some other ones in here. Here's 2009, which was, I think it ended up being a strong El Nino. We were like blowing 2009 El Nino completely out of the water. And then let's see if we can find, here's 97 now. At this time in 97, there's just no competition. There is some discussion too about, well, there was more cold water here. There was cold water up here. This was the PDO, and I'm not going down that rabbit hole. We're in a different phase of the PDO. I think our existing El Nino is fighting a cold-based PDO, which is what fed and amplified the La Nina thing for 3 years. So our El Nino this year is trying to make headway against a base state that is not particularly favorable. I'm just going through all the images here real quick. And here's where we are. Notice it's a lot warm up here. That's the cold, they call it the cold phase of the PDO. It's because it's colder water off the Pacific Northwest and warmer water here. Anyway, we're not doing too bad. We're still sort of in the ballpark of 2015. We're blowing 2009 away, but we can't compete with 1997. That and the 82-83 El Nino are probably the two strongest El Ninos of our lifetime. Ocean surface current. This gives us another clue into the updraft of the Walker circulation sort of thing. So we see, and hopefully you can see, maybe I can zoom it in here a little bit. New Guinea here, westward moving current driven by persistent westerly anomalies. Now it sort of moves up here to the north. You see an eastward current off of Ecuador and Galapagos Islands here on the equator. We think, so this is driven by easterly winds here, westerly winds here. If I were just eyeballing, I would say the updraft portion of the Walker circulation would be somewhere like here. And I know you can't see it, but it says 176.26 west. Okay, but all the other data we said suggest, well, maybe it's more like somewhere right around here. Now, here's a little trick that Ben showed me that really works really nice. Ben's, if you follow the comment section, him and I get into some deep discussions, and I've learned a few things from him. Now, currents, now we look at actual sea surface temperature anomalies, okay? If you have a westward current here, an eastward current here, oh, and this is not anomaly, this is actual sea surface temperatures, you get a pocket of warm water where the two competing air masses intersect, and that is a good indicator where the updraft of the Walker circulation is. That point right there in the center of this warm pool is at 175 east, exactly what all the other charts are saying in regard to the outgoing long wave radiation and that sort of thing. So we think, one, the good news is there is an upward branch of the Walker circulation. It is right here. Now the trick is this ball of warm water and that that upward branch of the Walker circulation needs to start moving off to the east as we get deeper into El Nino. The westerly anomalies will become more entrenched over a larger portion of the Pacific. That will drive the center of the Walker circulation to the east, and that will bring the center of precipitation. If you have a chimney that's spouting warm, moist air up into the atmosphere, and then clouds will bloom out from the top of it, the moisture coming into California, yes, it comes in on the jet, it comes in on the active phases, the MJO, but it's also supported by the Walker circulation. Right now, I think we're a little bit behind. Ben did some reanalysis of past El Ninos and suggested that the center of the Walker circulation was further east in the 82, 83 El Nino and the 97 El Nino and even the 2015 El Nino. Not surprised, and we had that stall back in the middle of the summer, and I think that's going to hamper the full-on blooming of this El Nino into super El Nino status. That doesn't mean we will not end up with a strong El Nino, but probably not a super El Nino. Let's dig a little deeper. All right, final look at what is the atmosphere doing. Difference in pressure during Darwin, Australia, over in the Indian Ocean, Tahiti in the Pacific Ocean. That's called the Southern Oscillation Index. One would expect pressure to be falling over Tahiti with a building El Nino, the center of the Walker circulation, somewhere moving towards the vicinity of Tahiti. All right. If pressure is lower in Tahiti, the index goes negative. Today, minus 6.45. Okay, not bad. Looking back, minus 5, minus 19. Whoa, 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 whoa. Man, it's been negative. Actually, I think I did it, when I do update the North Pacific forecast. I think it's been 45 or 49 days in a row. It's been negative now. That's a good sign. The 30-day average takes some of the noise out of the variation. We're at minus 13.17. We were a little bit stronger. We were at minus 15 in September. We have a nearly building active phase of the MJO. I expect this to continue to be falling. The 90-day average, minus 11.43. Definitely dropping. All right, so where would you want to be? Well, when you're in the peak of El Nino, this is probably down at minus 15. This is down at minus 25. I think that's where we were in the 2015 El Nino. So those are the targets we're looking for. We're not there yet, but we've got October, November, December, probably into January till we start getting into where those peak numbers should be. So we're doing okay, given the time of year. The 30-day moving SOI graphed out so you just can see where we are. There's the zero line, dead neutral. Here's where we've been since January 2021, positive. The downward spikes, the active phase of the MJO. The upward spikes, the active phase of the MJO. But you can see there was just this persistent positive state, La Nina. Then we got to the beginning of this year, boom, just fall off a cliff, exactly where we want to be. Then there was that stall that occurred in July. That was just like, oh no. Now we're back in the game. We want to be deeper. I want to see this down around 20 at least and be holding there. But you know what? I think it's still a little bit early in the game. I get too excited. I want to see a super El Nino. I don't think that's going to happen. So this is probably appropriate for the sort of El Nino that we have. Then finally, the sea surface temperature forecast for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. This is from the CFS model. So where are we now? We're approaching October. This says temperatures are down at plus 1.4 degrees. That seems about like where we are. We'll see the weekly update will be coming here in a day or two, but we were at, 1.5 the last reading. We're probably going to drop down to 1.4, something like that. This says going down to 1.35 for most of the rest of October, but then a steady upward push to about plus 1.7 degrees or so from, I'll say, late November the whole way through January, then still clearly an El Nino range the whole way into June. I don't think we're going to have to worry if this model is close to right now. This is probably the more optimistic view. The more pessimistic view, they got a PDF corrected version. It shows temperatures going down to minus 1.1. I don't think that's going to happen. And then only rebounding to barely 1.5, which would put us solidly in moderate El Nino territory. This says solidly in strong El Nino territory. I'd say this is probably closer to right, and we looked when the consensus model came out. It actually, the CFS model was, if anything, a little bit on the low range for all the dynamic models. So I'm going to go more with this, and if I were to guess, I would say a value of about, for a month or two, of about 1.6 to 1.7 degrees above normal in the Nino 3.4 region, which would be solid, strong El Nino. Not super El Nino, just strong, but that's okay. All right, so let's summarize real quick. What's going on? Developments. Clouds continue building near the dateline. They have been since June. Outgoing long-wave radiation. Evidence of the upflow of the Walker circulation up at Jetstream level. We've talked about that extensively here. Seems to be happening. Equatorial currents suggest the Walker circulation effects are at the surface as well, and they're lined up almost exactly with the outgoing long-wave radiation, suggesting somewhere around 175 east is the upflow of the Walker circulation. The North Pacific jet stream is improving. Sure is. And that's a mix of course, the season's changing, but I think there's some El Nino influence in there too, especially considering that we're fighting have been fighting a long-running La Nina. Things are looking actually reasonably good, considering everything. Southern Oscillation Index continues negative. 30 and 90 degree averages are down. We've been negative for 45 or 49 days in a row here. We're heading in the right direction. And because the Walker circulation is building, west wind anomalies are holding over the Kelvin wave generation area and are forecast to build strongly. Hooray! More developments. Kelvin wave number 6 is erupting and Kelvin wave number 7 is developing. This is good news. And we have an active MJO, the 8th one of the year, and maybe we'll get Kelvin wave number 8 from that. Can't ask for anything better. And all the ENSO models suggest more of the same moving forward. And if anything, the CFS version 2 is on the weak side. So projections, Walker circulation to continue building towards El Nino, and hopefully starting to slide off to the east as we get deeper into late fall and early winter. West wind anomaly pattern is expected to continue over the Kelvin wave generation area. At least one more active MJO Kelvin wave is forecast. Ocean and atmospheric coupling to strengthen. It's not we're not wringing our hands and we're going, is it going to happen? Yeah, it's happening. And with the seasonal push and everything else going on, it's going to strengthen. Peak ONI projection. Ben and I might have a difference of opinion here. I might be a little bit too optimistic, but I'm going to give it somewhere between 1.5 and 1.8. If you all have an opinion, give us a comment. Let us know what you think. We're not betting people, but the warmer the water is, the stronger the jet stream is, the more likely outcome for stronger storms and more surf and more snow and water into California. So I'm hoping it's more on the strong side, not on the weak side. Because once you start falling into moderate El Nino territory, the effects of it on producing rainfall into California become much, much less certain. You need a stronger El Nino to really get that water and snow potential somewhere above average. So we're kind of hoping for that. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. First off, number one thing that really matters, jet stream is looking good. We have gales on the charts. We have 45-foot seas forecast in a couple days over the North Dateline region. We're pretty much within the 72-hour window of that happening. That is good news. Now, it's still too far to the north to be real like an El Nino type storm, but that tropical system, and we didn't even get into all the details on that, but that tropical system off of the Philippines, keep your eyes on that, look at the models, see what's happening. If it does the recurve thing and hits the jet stream and blows up good on the dateline, we could have some real surf from that. In the meantime, smaller systems to give us a warm-up. All in all, things looking pretty good in the Pacific. From the El Nino front, well, we've gone over all that already. It's on track, it's coupled, it's building. The real question is just how strong is it going to be? For now, we're still considering strong status. It's just a matter of when and how it all plays out. But everything looking pretty good as of right now. I would say you should be deep into your training pattern. You should be getting ready for real surf. You don't want to be starting, well, you could start your training program now and you might be okay, but I've been working on mine the whole way since March or April. So get prepared Get your board orders in, get your wetsuits, get all the gear you need, because once things start happening, and it looks like we're poised for that to happen, things are going to start moving fast and furious. You're going to get consistent swells, swell after swell, and there isn't going to be a lot of opportunity to hopefully not surf. You'll be spending a lot of time in the ocean if this all works out the way we hope it does. Hopefully that's not wishful thinking. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you have questions or concern, write your comments up in the comment section. We try to reply pretty quickly. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. We're nearly at 5,000 subscribers. In fact, last week's video, we got 6,000 views, which was, I think, our all-time high. You'd think there'd actually be more given the wealth of information. At least that's the comments I get, is like, for all the depth of information that's going on here, you'd think there'd be a lot more people watching. But slowly, we're building traction, and I'm happy for that. The people that are watching here, you all are great people, and it is a pleasure to do this for you. If you'd like to make a contribution, you can. Not required, but we always appreciate. Use the special thanks button down below. And with that said, prepare to go surfing, get in shape, proceed with caution, be safe, don't get hurt. It's still early in the year. You don't want to blow it for when the really good stuff comes. And other than that, we will be here and do this again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.